Isabel Hartley had always prided herself on the orderly, predictable life she had built with her husband, Damien, and their daughter, Pippa. The family lived in a charming flat in the heart of Notting Hill, a neighborhood known for its leafy streets and vibrant culture. Isabel, a respected physics lecturer at University College London, had a sharp mind and a calm demeanor. Damien, a history teacher at a local school, was meticulous and reserved, traits that made him seem the perfect partner, at least on the surface. For years, their routine had been just that, predictable. Even their small, quiet home had become a haven of certainty. But that all began to change when Camilla Rowe moved into the flat above theirs. She was a young, bright-eyed postgraduate student, full of ambition and charm. At first, she was just another face in the building. But soon, Isabel found herself noticing how often Camilla's laughter would fill the hallways, how her perfume lingered in the air after a casual chat in the stairwell. It was subtle at first, but Isabel could sense the shift. One afternoon, as Isabel was making her way home from a university lecture, she bumped into Camilla in the lobby. The young woman's smile was wide, and she greeted Isabel with an enthusiasm that felt out of place. Camilla mentioned she had been looking for someone to help her with her research, and Isabel, ever the helpful academic, agreed to meet with her soon. That evening, Isabel told Damien about their conversation. He didn't seem particularly interested, offering a quick nod and then returning to his work. Isabel didn't think much of it, assuming it was simply the casual, professional interaction it appeared to be. Yet, something in Damien's reaction bothered her. He was distant, almost too distant. Isabel brushed it off as nothing more than a busy day at work. But deep down, she felt a subtle undercurrent of change. And, as the days passed, she began to see the signs. It wasn't long before the quiet tension that had been building in the Hartley household came to a head. One evening, as a gust of wind blew through the city, the fire alarm in their building suddenly went off. At first, Isabel thought it was just a drill, a minor inconvenience. But the urgency in the blaring sound soon had her rushing to gather Pippa and Damien. The smoke was thick in the hallways as they made their way to the staircase, the fire having broken out on the floor below. People were shouting, running in every direction. Damien took charge, leading Isabel and Pippa to safety with calm precision. But then, Isabel saw Camilla, standing frozen by the elevator, eyes wide with fear. Without a second thought, Damien rushed towards her, shouting for her to follow him. Isabel watched in shock as he reached Camilla, wrapping an arm around her as if she were his priority. The elevator doors slammed shut behind them, and Isabel, frozen in place, stood with Pippa at the stairwell, waiting for the all-clear signal. As the fire alarm faded and the smoke began to clear, Isabel's mind raced. Why had Damien been so quick to protect Camilla? It wasn't lost on her that he hadn't done the same for Isabel or their daughter. Had she missed something? Was there more to Damien's relationship with their new neighbor than he had let on? The fire incident had exposed something deep within Isabel, something that had been slowly creeping into their marriage for months. She tried to shake off the thought, convincing herself it was a simple act of instinct, but a part of her knew better. She knew this wasn't just about a fire. It was about something far more complicated. In the weeks that followed, Camilla began spending more and more time at the Hartleys' flat. What started as a casual request for academic help slowly turned into frequent visits under the guise of needing Damien's expertise in history. Isabel noticed the way Camilla would laugh a little too freely at Damien's dry jokes, how her eyes lingered just a second too long when they spoke. Isabel told herself it was harmless, that Camilla was just a young student eager to learn. Yet, something about the way she interacted with Damien unsettled her. Damien, for his part, seemed to have no awareness of the subtle changes in his own behavior. He would engage with Camilla in a way that was too patient, too warm. When Isabel mentioned this to him, he brushed it off with a laugh, claiming that Camilla was simply looking for guidance and that he was only trying to help. But Isabel wasn't convinced. The small things kept adding up, the way Damien would straighten his shirt when Camilla entered the room, the slight change in his tone when he spoke to her. Isabel began to feel like an outsider in her own home, as though the space she had built with Damien and Pippa was slowly being eroded by an invisible force. It wasn't just the physical presence of Camilla that disturbed her, though. It was the subtle emotional shift that was taking place. Isabel could feel it in Damien's absence during their conversations, in the way he seemed distracted and distant when they were together. It was as if he was preoccupied with something, or someone else. The following weeks were marked by a growing unease in Isabel's heart. As the weather grew colder, the windows of their flat would often fog up with the warmth of shared moments. But the warmth that Isabel once shared with Damien seemed to be slipping through her fingers, dissipating with every fleeting glance he exchanged with Camilla. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, but Isabel knew. It was in the way Damien would greet Camilla at the door with a certain softness in his voice, the slight smile that lingered too long when she spoke to him. These small actions became hard to ignore. It wasn't just Camilla's presence that felt invasive, it was the emotional space she had begun to occupy. Isabel began to feel like an outsider, like a silent observer in her own home, as Damien and Camilla's interactions grew more intimate. One evening, after a long day of lectures and coursework, Isabel returned home to find Damien sitting on the couch, reading a book. Pippa was at the table, sketching, completely immersed in her drawing. The flat was quiet, but there was an underlying tension in the air. As Isabel placed her bag on the table, she noticed a small gift bag on the counter, wrapped in a vibrant shade of pink. The tag read, "To Damien, for your help and kindness, Camilla." A sense of unease gnawed at Isabel's stomach. She knew it was just a small gesture, an innocent token of appreciation, but her instincts told her otherwise. She tried to push the feeling aside, convincing herself it was nothing more than an innocent exchange between a student and a teacher. But deep down, she felt that it symbolized something far deeper, a shift in their relationship, a subtle but undeniable change in the dynamic that once felt so secure. That evening, Damien had been unusually distant. When Isabel tried to engage him in conversation, he offered only half-hearted responses. His attention seemed elsewhere, and Isabel could tell that his mind was preoccupied, even though he insisted nothing was wrong. As the days passed, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Damien was pulling away from her. It wasn't just the physical distance, though that was certainly part of it, but the emotional withdrawal that seemed to be growing between them. He was no longer the man she had once known. The more Isabel thought about it, the more she realized that the small signs had been there all along, subtle shifts in Damien's behavior, moments of distraction, the way his eyes would linger a little too long on Camilla. What had once been a harmless exchange of ideas had now morphed into something more dangerous. Isabel could feel it, the building tension, the secret undercurrents of an affair that had yet to fully unfold. One evening, Isabel decided to confront Damien. She had waited long enough, allowing her suspicions to grow unchecked. As they sat in the living room, she asked him point-blank about his relationship with Camilla. She asked if there was something going on between them, if he had begun to develop feelings for the young woman who seemed to have infiltrated their lives. Damien's face flushed with surprise, and for a moment, Isabel thought he might deny it all. Instead, he hesitated. "Isabel," he began slowly, "it's not what you think. Camilla is just a student, and I'm only helping her with her studies. You have nothing to worry about." But Isabel could see the hesitation in his eyes, the uncertainty in his voice. It wasn't just the words he said, it was the way he said them. He was trying to convince her, but something in his tone betrayed him. Isabel didn't know what to think anymore. She had asked for the truth, and yet, all she had received was a carefully crafted response designed to keep her in the dark. Her heart sank. The truth felt more elusive than ever, like a veil that hung just beyond her reach. Isabel couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening behind closed doors, something that would shatter the fragile trust they had built over the years. That night, as Isabel lay in bed beside Damien, the weight of her thoughts kept her awake. Her mind raced, replaying every conversation, every glance between Damien and Camilla. She had tried so hard to believe that there was nothing between them, but the evidence was mounting. The air between them was thick with unsaid words and hidden desires. And as she lay there, staring at the ceiling, Isabel made a decision. She wasn't going to sit idly by and let her marriage fall apart. She wasn't going to let Camilla and Damien's secret world destroy everything she had worked for. She would fight for her marriage, even if it meant uncovering the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Isabel's heart pounded in her chest as the days passed, and the tension between her and Damien only deepened. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted permanently between them. The small, subtle signs that she had dismissed before now seemed glaringly obvious. Damien's attention was more divided than ever, his thoughts preoccupied with something, or someone, else. The next morning, Isabel awoke to an empty bed. Damien was gone, and though it was still early, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She quickly dressed and grabbed her phone, checking her messages. As she scrolled through, her eyes landed on a text from Pippa. "Isabel, you might want to check the university website. There's been a fire at the faculty building." Isabel's blood ran cold as she read the message. A fire? The university where Damien worked. Her mind raced. She immediately called Damien's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic rose in her throat as she tried to contact him again, but there was no answer. Frantically, she grabbed her keys and rushed out the door, her thoughts spiraling. She wasn't sure what to expect, but the feeling in her gut told her that something terrible was unfolding. She arrived at the university to find chaos. Fire engines were parked outside the main building, smoke billowing from the windows. Police officers and firefighters were rushing to and from the scene, trying to control the situation. Isabel's stomach twisted as she approached the building. The sight was harrowing, but it was the anxious expressions on the faces of the staff and students that truly unsettled her. She was just about to step closer when she spotted someone familiar. It was Camilla. She was standing in the crowd, her face pale, her hands trembling. And standing next to her, with his arm protectively around her, was Damien. Isabel's breath caught in her throat. She had seen them together before, but never like this. The way Damien was holding Camilla, the look of concern on his face, it wasn't just a teacher looking out for a student. No, this was different. This was personal. Without thinking, Isabel walked towards them, her heart racing. As she approached, Damien looked up, his expression shifting quickly from concern to shock. His gaze faltered as he saw Isabel, and for a brief moment, he seemed unsure of how to react. "Isabel, what are you doing here?" Damien asked, his voice strained. "I should be asking you that," Isabel replied, her voice low but steady. "Why are you here with her? Why are you holding her like that?" Camilla, who had been standing quietly, looked between the two of them, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Damien just came to check on me," she said, her voice shaky. I'm fine, really." Isabel looked at Camilla, then back at Damien. She could see the guilt in his eyes, but he didn't say anything more. The silence between them was deafening, and Isabel's anger began to simmer. It was clear now. The truth that she had been avoiding, the truth that she had known all along, was finally staring her in the face. Damien wasn't just helping Camilla with her studies. He was emotionally invested in her, and whatever facade he had put up for Isabel was now crumbling before her eyes. "You said there was nothing going on," Isabel said, her voice shaking with a mix of hurt and disbelief. "You lied to me. You've been lying to me this whole time." Damien opened his mouth as if to respond, but no words came out. His face had gone pale, and for a moment, Isabel thought he might confess everything. But instead, he turned towards Camilla, his gaze softening as he spoke to her. "We should go," he said gently, taking Camilla's hand in his. "It's not safe here." Isabel watched as they walked away, the weight of betrayal heavy on her chest. She stood frozen, unable to move, as the two of them disappeared into the crowd of people. For the first time in months, Isabel allowed herself to cry. Tears filled her eyes as the magnitude of what had just happened settled over her. She had been living in denial, refusing to believe the truth that was right in front of her. But now, there was no escaping it. Her husband, the man she had loved for so long, was with someone else. And though she had known, deep down, that their relationship was slipping away, it didn't make it any easier to accept. As she walked away from the chaos, Isabel realized that her marriage was no longer the one she had fought for. The trust was gone, shattered into 1,000 pieces. And though the fire had been put out, the destruction in her heart was far from over. The days that followed were a blur of emotions for Isabel. The fire at the university had been contained, but the flames of betrayal that had ignited in her heart seemed impossible to extinguish. Every moment felt heavier than the last. She kept replaying the scene in her head, Damien with Camilla, the soft way he held her, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. It was a painful reminder of the reality she had been avoiding. It was early in the morning when Isabel received a call from a number she didn't recognize. Hesitant, she answered. "Hello. Isabel, it's Pippa. You need to come to the university. I found something." The urgency in Pippa's voice sent a chill through Isabel's body. She didn't need to ask what it was about. She could already guess. But her feet moved on their own, and before she knew it, she was on her way to the university once again. When she arrived, Pippa was waiting for her near the faculty building. Her face was pale, and she didn't say anything immediately. She just handed Isabel an envelope, sealed with a red wax stamp. "What's this?" Isabel asked, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. Pippa hesitated. "I found it in Damien's office. He didn't know I was there." Isabel's heart skipped a beat. She slowly opened the envelope and pulled out a series of papers. As she began to read, her breath caught in her throat. It was a letter, one written by Damien, but it wasn't addressed to her. It was addressed to Camilla. In the letter, Damien confessed his feelings for Camilla. He spoke of how he had been trying to distance himself from her, how he had been torn between his responsibilities and his emotions. But the most devastating part was at the end of the letter. He said, "I can't hide my love for you anymore. I've tried, but it's clear that we belong together." Isabel felt as though the ground had been ripped out from beneath her. The words on the page were clear, direct, and final. There was no ambiguity. Damien had been in love with Camilla for a long time, and Isabel had been blind to it. She had trusted him, believed in him, and had convinced herself that their marriage was still something worth saving. But this letter, this confession, had shattered all of that. As Isabel stood there, holding the letter in her trembling hands, her mind raced. What was she supposed to do now? Confront Damien again? Expose him for the liar he was? She could feel the anger building inside her, a burning rage that threatened to consume her. But at the same time, a part of her was numb, too exhausted to fight anymore. Pippa placed a hand on Isabel's shoulder, pulling her from her thoughts. "You need to confront him. This can't go on any longer." Isabel nodded slowly, though a part of her wasn't sure if she was ready for what would come next. The truth had already been exposed, but how much more could she endure before it broke her completely? Later that evening, Isabel found herself standing in front of Damien's office door. Her hands were clammy, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear his voice from inside, though she couldn't make out the words. It sounded like he was talking to someone. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage, and knocked. "Come in," Damien's voice called out. Isabel opened the door and stepped inside. Damien looked up in surprise, his expression quickly shifting from confusion to something else, something almost like guilt. He stood up, his eyes darting to the envelope she was holding in her hand. "What is it, Isabel?" he asked, his voice low and guarded. Isabel didn't say anything at first. She simply walked over to his desk and placed the letter in front of him. "I think you owe me an explanation," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Damien's face went pale as he saw the letter. He reached for it, but Isabel pulled it back. "No," she said firmly. "You're going to read it aloud. You're going to explain yourself to me." Damien hesitated, but finally, he opened the letter. The words seemed to hang in the air between them, each sentence a sharp reminder of the betrayal that had unfolded before her. As he read aloud, Isabel's heart shattered all over again. She had never wanted to hear these words, never wanted to know the truth so clearly. But now it was undeniable. Damien's feelings for Camilla were real, and no amount of denial or excuse could change that. When he finished reading, he looked up at Isabel, his eyes filled with regret. "Isabel, I never meant for you to find out this way," he began, his voice faltering. "How did you mean for me to find out, Damien?" Isabel asked, her voice cold and cutting. "Was I supposed to live in ignorance while you carried on with her? Was I supposed to pretend everything was fine?" Damien didn't answer immediately. Instead, he sank back into his chair, his face buried in his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though it seemed hollow. "I never meant for it to happen like this. But I couldn't keep lying to you. You've already lied to me enough," Isabel interrupted, her voice rising with the anger she had been holding back. "I trusted you. I believed in our marriage, in what we had. And this is what you've been doing behind my back." Damien looked up, his face full of shame. "I never wanted to hurt you. I swear." Isabel felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Well, you did," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You've hurt me more than I could ever have imagined." Without another word, Isabel turned and walked out of the office, the weight of the revelation sinking in. The world outside felt distant, as if she were walking in a dream. She had known the truth, but hearing it out loud, seeing it in black and white, was like a punch to the gut. And as she stepped out into the cold evening air, she couldn't help but wonder what her life would look like now. Where did she go from here? How could she ever trust again? The tension in Isabel's home had reached a boiling point. It had been a week since she had confronted Damien with the letter, yet the silence between them was suffocating. Damien had tried to apologize, tried to explain, but nothing he said seemed to reach her. His words felt hollow, empty, and it became clear that no amount of explanation could undo the hurt he had caused. As the days passed, Isabel found herself retreating further into herself. She barely spoke to Damien anymore, and when she did, it was only out of necessity. She busied herself with her work, spending late nights in the library or at her desk, trying to escape the tension at home. But even there, her mind kept returning to the same painful thoughts. One evening, after a long day of teaching, Isabel was sitting in her office at the university when she received an unexpected message. It was from Pippa, who had been her confidant throughout this ordeal. The message was simple: "Meet me at the cafe. I have something to show you." Isabel's curiosity piqued, and without hesitation, she gathered her things and left the office. When she arrived at the cafe, Pippa was already there, sitting at a corner table, a coffee cup in front of her. She looked up as Isabel approached and gestured for her to sit. "Isabel, I think I found something that might help you," Pippa said, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. Isabel frowned. "What do you mean?" Pippa leaned forward and slid a folder across the table toward her. "I've been doing some digging. I found something in Damien's personal files. It's a contract. Not just any contract, though." Isabel's heart raced as she opened the folder. Inside was a legal document, a contract between Damien and Camilla. The details were vague, but the implications were clear. It was an agreement, one that promised money and other benefits in exchange for Camilla's cooperation. "What is this?" Isabel asked, her voice shaking. What is he doing? Pippa shook her head. I don't know all the details yet, but it's obvious that Damien has been keeping this from you. It's more than just an affair. It looks like he's involved in something shady. Isabel's mind raced as she absorbed the information. This was more than just a betrayal of trust. Damien had crossed a line, and now Isabel had to decide what to do with this new knowledge. She couldn't let this go, not now. She had to act. Thank you, Pippa, Isabel said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. This gives me the leverage I need. Pippa nodded, her expression serious. Be careful, Isabel. Whatever you decide, don't let him see you coming. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Isabel barely registered the walk back to her apartment, her mind focused entirely on the document in her hand. She had a plan now, but it was risky. She had no idea what Damien was truly capable of, but one thing was certain, she couldn't allow him to continue manipulating her life. The next morning, Isabel decided it was time to confront Damien once again. But this time, she wouldn't be the one on the defensive. She had information now, information that could destroy him. It was time to turn the tables. As she walked into their shared living room, she found Damien sitting on the couch, his eyes glued to his phone. He didn't even look up as she approached. Damien, Isabel said, her voice calm but firm. We need to talk. He looked up at her, his expression guarded. What about? Isabel placed the folder on the coffee table in front of him. What's this? She asked, her tone icy. Damien's face went pale as he glanced at the folder. His hand shook slightly as he reached for it, but Isabel pulled it back. No, she said sharply. You're going to read it. All of it. Out loud. He hesitated, but then reluctantly opened the folder. His eyes scanned the document quickly, and Isabel could see the moment he realized what it was. His face twisted in shock, then in guilt. Isabel, I didn't mean for you to find out like this, he stammered. Isabel took a step closer, her voice colder than ever. No, Damien. You didn't mean for me to find out at all. This is a contract, isn't it? Between you and Camilla. A contract that involves money, promises, and betrayal. Damien swallowed hard, but he didn't speak. He couldn't. The truth was now out in the open, and there was no way to deny it. Tell me why, Isabel demanded. Why would you do this to me? Why would you make such an agreement behind my back? Damien's gaze dropped to the floor. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was trying to protect you, to protect everything we've built, but I couldn't control what I felt for her. Isabel laughed bitterly. So you thought you could keep me in the dark while you played your little game with her? No, Damien. This ends now. Damien looked up at her, his eyes pleading. Isabel, please. I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. Isabel shook her head. It's too late for apologies. You've already hurt me more than I could ever forgive. With that, Isabel turned and walked out of the room, leaving Damien sitting in stunned silence. She knew she had to make a decision now. There was no turning back from this point. As she walked down the hallway toward the door, she heard Damien call her name, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Not when everything she had known had been shattered by his betrayal. Isabel had a plan, and she was going to see it through, no matter what the cost. Isabel sat quietly in her apartment, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the room. Her hands trembled slightly as she stared at the letter from Pippa once more. Her mind was set, she would confront Damien, not as the woman who was betrayed but as someone who had the power to make her own choices. She would take control, end this chapter, and make sure he understood the cost of his deceit. After a long, restless night, Isabel knew it was time to execute her plan. She had kept her composure, methodically preparing herself for this moment, But as she approached the door to Damien's study, her heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea how this would end, but she couldn't let fear dictate her actions anymore. She found Damien seated at his desk, half-empty glass of whiskey in front of him, a pensive look on his face as he stared into the distance. He hadn't noticed her enter. "Damien," Isabel said, her voice steady yet carrying a weight of resolve. He looked up, surprised, but there was something almost too practiced in his reaction, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "Isabel," he said, standing up quickly. I didn't expect you to come in here." Isabel took a step forward, the folder she had found earlier in her hand. "You didn't expect me to come in here?" "You should have. I've been patient long enough, but now I know everything." Damien's face paled. His jaw clenched. "Isabel, please. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "You didn't mean for me to find out, you mean," Isabel replied, her tone sharp. "You thought I would stay in the dark forever, that you could continue your little charade with Camilla and I would never find out. But I know, Damien. I know about the contract. I know about the lies, the manipulation." For a moment, there was silence. Damien looked lost for words. He had always been able to charm his way out of anything, but now, his usual tactics weren't working. "I didn't want you to get hurt," Damien said weakly, taking a step towards her. "But you have to understand, it was never about you. It was about me, about things I couldn't explain." Isabel shook her head. "No, Damien. You've had plenty of time to explain yourself. And I don't want your excuses. I want the truth. Why did you do it? Why betray me like this?" Damien paused, as if considering his next words. His eyes dropped to the ground, and he sighed heavily. "I never wanted to hurt you, Isabel. I thought I could control it, what I was feeling for Camilla. It wasn't supposed to be like this. But she was different. I couldn't help myself. I didn't know how to stop it. That's the problem, Damien. You never thought about me. You never thought about what this would do to our life, our marriage. You didn't care." The words stung, but they were true. Isabel could see the remorse in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. She had given him so many chances to come clean, to fix things, but he had chosen Camilla over her time and time again. "I can't go back to what we were, Damien," Isabel continued, her voice steady. "You've crossed a line that I can't unsee. I don't know if I can forgive you for this." Damien reached out, his hand trembling slightly. "Isabel, please. Don't leave. I'll make it right. I will fix this. Just give me a chance." Isabel stepped back, holding the folder firmly. "You can't fix this. It's too late. You've destroyed what we had, and I won't let you lie to me anymore." With those words, she turned and walked toward the door. But before she could leave, Damien spoke one last time. "Isabel, you can't just walk away. I love you. Please, don't leave me." Isabel froze at the door. She stood there for a long moment, the words echoing in her mind. She had loved him too, once. But love wasn't enough anymore. Not when trust had been shattered beyond repair. Not when betrayal had stained everything they had built. She turned around to face him, her eyes cold. "Love isn't enough when it's built on lies, Damien. I don't need you to love me. I need you to respect me. And right now, you don't." Without another word, Isabel opened the door and stepped out of the room. She didn't look back as she walked down the hallway. Her heart was heavy, but she knew this was the right choice. She had taken control of her life again. The next morning, Isabel filed for divorce. It was the end of an era, but it was also the beginning of something new. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was no longer afraid. She had faced the truth, and now she was free to rebuild her life on her own terms.